Our group chose the 70s era for our fashion history report. I'm Joella Hallam.
I'm Jackie Brindle.
And I'm Emmeline Hernandez.
The first designer I want to present to you is Jessica McClintock. She started the Gunny Sack brand, and she bought it. She didn't start it. She bought the Gunny Sack brand from Ellie Bailey in 1969. But she's the one who really developed it into the successful brand that it was. After the Gunny Sack dress line fell out of popularity in the 80s, she changed the name of her line to Jessica McClintock. Today, her designs includes home apparel, home fashions, apparel, beauty, and fragrance. The historical events that influenced the Gunny Sack line was the 1976 was the bicentennial for the United States. At that time, people were looking back to our ancestors and the pioneers. This influenced the prairie fashion of the decade that became so popular with young girls. Little House on the Prairie was popular on television, and the hippie movement really fed into the prairie dress line. The pictures on the right are my sister in her Gunny Sack dress, and that was when she went to prom. And then I borrowed her dress. That's actually a picture of me on the far right. The Gunny Sack dress line was known because it was very feminine, had full skirts, ruffles, they were usually calico, a lot of lace and satin ribbon. And this was a little off from what the other fashions of the 70s were. A lot of the other fashions in the 70s had women in very clean, straight, simple lines. But the Gunny Sack dress line was very popular with the young girls in high school especially, and they often wore them to proms and special occasions. The next designer I'd like to report on is Calvin Klein. He was born and raised in New York City. He went to a designing school there, and then he apprenticed with a suit manufacturer for 5 years. In 1968, he wanted to start his own line, and his friend and him, Barry Schwartz, went into business together. At the beginning of his career, he focused on women's apparel and suits. They were very simple lines and clean cut. He ventured next into menwear and jeans, and he became really well known for his denim jeans and denim jackets and denim dresses. In the 80s, he ventured on to underwear and luxurious perfumes and colognes and home apparel towards the end of his career. And in 2003, he sold his line to Van Heusen. These are some classic Calvin Klein. Jeans were a big thing for him. If you had Calvin Klein jeans, you were pretty in style. And he also had a successful business with Vogue patterns, and you could make a lot of your own Calvin Klein designer clothing. He was also known for his underwear. He became quite famous for men and women's underwear, provocative ads that sometimes were controversial, and that was Calvin Klein. And here's some of his clothing of the 70s. He was very popular for his denims and both men and women's fashions.
Okay, my designer was Diane von Furstenberg. She was a Belgian-American designer, best known for her self-named label. DVF was a lot of the times how it was referred to. It's still going today, so that's what they refer to it as. She's the creator of the iconic wrap dress. So it's kind of a cool thing that she was the one that created that, first came out with that style. Her first husband was Prince Egon zu Furstenberg, so that's where she got the name from, and she decided to keep it. As she was getting married, she kind of decided that she didn't want to just be a stay-at-home wife, that even though she was marrying a prince and she would be taken care of, that she still wanted to make a name for herself and wanted to be able to support herself. And it's, I guess, a good thing she did, because when they split up, she decided to launch her label, which began in 1970. And then by 1972, she created the iconic wrap dress. The idea first came to her after she saw Julia Nixon Eisenhower on TV. She was wearing a wrap top and a skirt, and she felt that would be a great design to combine the two, and it was a hit. By 1975, she was making 15,000 dresses a week. She was quoted saying that she would see women lining all over the streets wearing her dresses. She'd see them everywhere. It was a very simple cotton jersey that flattered everybody's bodies. So that was one of the reasons why you saw so many women wearing it of all sizes and ages. It just looked flattering on everyone. Due to this, it was a symbol of women's liberation in the 1970s. So you'd see her patterns or dresses everywhere. The first styles were very much so 70s patterns, which you can see here in these dresses that were from her first line. So these are some of her early designs and her early patterns. And then my next designer was Giorgio Armani. He's an Italian fashion designer. What's kind of cool is that he actually began his career in medicine, but he eventually left that and decided to enter into the retail world. He first was a window dresser, and from there he became a sales associate, and he just loved being around the clothing and learned a lot. And by the early 1960s, he had secured a menswear design role at Nino Cerruti, which is a company in Italy. So he was able to be a part of that. But by 1975, he came out with his own label. It started with signature menswear line, and that's kind of where he grew his popularity through suits and his deconstructed suit coats. And by 1976, he was stocked at Barney's in New York. So that's kind of when his popularity grew in America. These are some of his earlier designs from the 1970s. So as you can see, both for men and women. Giorgio Armani in the US, his popularity skyrocketed in the 1980s. It was very popular. His Armani suits were being showcased on shows such as Miami Vice. There's a photo there of a couple of his early suits. And so in the US, he grew a lot of popularity due to that show. In 1980, his label also grew to include perfumes, accessories, footwear, and other lines as well. I also read that in the early 2000s, he was also opening hotels. So he's definitely grown an empire and done a lot.
So my first one was Yves Saint Laurent, but as a designer, he just goes by Saint Laurent. He was born in Algeria in 1936, and when he was a teenager, he was working for the designer Christian Dior. He was educated in Paris, and in 1966 is when he started his first design line, fashion line. He is the creator of the peacoat, the sheer blouse, and the jumpsuit. And here we see the original sketches of the peacoat. And also the original sketches of the jumpsuit, the long pants, and the shorts with the jumpsuit. And then Roy Halston Froiwick, he dropped the first name Roy, so he just goes by Halston. And he was born in Iowa in 1932, and he studied at the Art Institute of Chicago. And while he was studying, he worked as a fashion merchandiser. Originally, he designed hats, and he met someone who was a hairdresser, and they let him put on display his hat designs. And so he became well known for his hat designs, and then later he moved on to designing dresses. And he created the halter dress and the short waist dress. So this is the halter dress and the shirtwaist dress.
And here are some of our references. And that is our presentation.